Instagram loves deleting our videos, so we're going to have to run this one back, and you know what that means. Once again, 4 minutes later, it's When Wellness Nerd Out time! What's up, you guys? Happy When Wellness Nerd Out time, people, and for those of you who just saw this, you're about to hear it again, because, again, the video got deleted, so, you know, I don't know how we can, we're just going to have to do it again quick. Hopefully it doesn't cut out on us this time. It's raining, maybe it's due to bad weather, whatever. So today we're going to talk about how, so this week we're talking about fats in general, and we're talking about lipid metabolism in the coming days, right? And I think as a necessary premise, before we get into how lipids themselves purely are broken down, we should talk about how when you eat fats, when you eat one thing, you produce the opposite, okay? So when you eat fats, you're going to produce carbs. So what do we mean? Well, gluconeogenesis will occur, and that's called gluconeogenesis because it's glucose. Hey, you can't eat that. Genesis, the production, right? Producing new glucose, all right? So again, when you eat fats, you're going to produce carbs, and that means what? When we eat carbs, right, we have a heavy carb diet, right? Carbs don't have any fats in them, but it's what they trigger our liver to do, and that is to produce fat. That would be to promote lipogenesis, right? So if we're eating fats, again, we're going to burn what we're eating until we eat too much of it that we have to store it, right? That we have, you know, no more energy requirements, so we don't need to burn it, and then we'll store it, right? But we're going to eat it, burn it, maybe store it, and produce the opposite. So you want to eat a lot of healthy fats in your diet, people, and produce glucose instead of eating carbs and producing fat, right? Now, a few carbs are fine, like we talked about last week in Carb Week, and the timing of when you eat them in the day makes a big difference, right? And what types, obviously. So that's obviously a big role there. But first, I think a necessary premise we should give before we dive into lipid metabolism in the coming days is how we maintain blood sugar levels. So when we talk about maintaining blood sugar levels, okay? First off, why do we want to maintain them? What happens when we have the blood sugar, okay? Now, it's good to have low blood sugar, right? And to have insulin not active. You know, don't get me wrong. Of course, that's good. But I think as a necessary premise, we should, again, review back to what happens because it's all connected. The body's, you know, full of cycles, right? And what happens when we're breaking down the sugar, we go from glycolysis to the Krebs cycle, aka citric acid cycle, to the electron transport chain to get bulk amounts of ATP, right, for energy. So that sums up cellular respiration in simple. Now, how do we get the glucose for that? We could either eat the sugar, okay? So again, we're eating sugar, we're breaking it down. We're eating the sugar, it's going into glycolysis. That's one, okay? Insulin's taking it through the blood to the tissues to be burned where it needs it. That's one, okay? Two, now when we eat excessive amounts of sugar, like we had talked about last week in Carb Week, and we're going to store it as glycogen, right? Now, when we're in a fasted state and we don't have that sugar right in our blood, our body says, well, let's break down these stores, right? Let's get it rolling. Let's break down the stores, put sugar in the blood so insulin can take it to the tissues to be burnt, okay? So that's another way, but then that only happens for so long. Eventually, we're going to run out, and to be exact, generally in a fasted state, you got about 10 to 18 hours of glycogen breakdown, okay? 10 to 18 hours, your body will burn through that glycogen before it needs to find another way to get glucose to break it down, to promote cellular respiration, right? And what is it? Well, it's to produce glucose. And that's where gluconeogenesis comes in. That's why we were talking about it before. So, again, we said when we eat fat, it promotes the production of glucose. So, gluconeogenesis. What are some things, what are some substrates, right? What are some constituents and things that, you know, precursors we can use to promote gluconeogenesis? Well, one are amino acids, right? And that's specifically the glucogenic amino acids. So we're talking about every amino acid except for leucine and lysine, right? Because those two are purely ketogenic. Now we have some that are ketogenic and glucogenic, right? And you know, if it matters, isoleucine, phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, threonine, right? I believe. And those are both, again, ketogenic and glucogenic, right? But really all we got to remember here is aside from leucine and lysine, all the other amino acids can be used to promote gluconeogenesis. So that's one. Because these are all non-carbohydrate precursors. We're out of carbohydrates. We need other things to make glucose because we don't have any more, right? And so that's one thing we could use. We probably prefer not to use the amino acids, right? Two are waste byproducts, right? So say something like lactic acid, lactate, right? And last, most important one we're going to talk about is glycerol. What's glycerol? Why is that so exciting? Well, because this is where it all kind of ties in, right? Glycerol is the backbone of a triglyceride, right? You have the glycerol backbone and the three fatty acids bound to that glycerol backbone. So when we eat some fat and we have enough oxygen, because you need oxygen to break down fat, right? It's an energy expensive process. And you're cleaving, you don't need oxygen to break down glucose, right? You're cleaving the triglyceride to break it down. We separate that glycerol backbone. It can now go through the blood, right? It can be transported to the liver, and glycerol can be used to promote the production of new glucose, gluconeogenesis, right? So really cool stuff. When you're eating fat, it promotes the production of carbs, okay? And when you're eating carbs, it promotes the production of fat. And that's why when we have those pasta-heavy diets, things like that, I don't understand, Shane, there's no fat in carb. Well, that's why. You know, you're eating this, promoting the production of the opposite. So that's a simple way of thinking about it. That's some quick food for thought. And we'll get deeper into lipid metabolism in the coming days. And we'll talk about how low insulin levels promote the burning of fat and what hormones are involved and other things like that, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for tuning in. Who do we got here? We got DX. We got Yes. What's up? You got it, Yes. So glad you're on here. Love you. And Bertha Flores. What's up? The OG. Always on. How you guys doing? Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you got something good out of that. I know you did, Yaz. You just said you did, so that's great. Have a great night, you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Happy wellness, and have a great rest of your night.